Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dumbbells, your snarky source for all things nutrition, fitness, wellness, and lifestyle. From damaged libidos to a-holes at your local gym and everything in between. But more to the point, life outside of where you're swinging a dumbbell.
That sounds great. That's pretty intelligent. Which is to say, we're never going to talk about sets and reps and other people's sets and reps and how amazing some athletes are. That's exactly the last thing I'm ever going to talk about.
Or how to execute a bench press.
I could give a crap when I'm not in the gym. That's not what I'm talking about. So that's this.
So what are we talking about today?
We've been talking a lot lately because we know a lot of people that struggle in relationship, and we know some people that are actually thriving in relationships, and we haven't touched on a relational thing in a while. So issue mitigation. So I guess resolution, how actually, and I know early on we talked about working with your spouse, and we talked about how to improve your marriage, and there's all kinds of cues. And we've talked about selflessness, and we've talked about if you live with God in the center of your marriage, that you're never really doing things for the other person. You're doing them for God.
Right.
And if you have that kind of mindset, then things get relatively clear and easy. But there's still a lot of people that struggle. And you had made some points just in talking about resolution and your thoughts on that. I don't think we can talk about this too much, because if there's a relationship that sucks and we have a relationship close to us that maybe might not have gone the way that it did, if there would have been better communication and better resolution.
Right.
And at the heart of it, we are selfish by nature. And we all want what's important to us. And speaking from a man's position, I think that somewhere in the back of your head, it's like, man, when I get married, life's going to get easy because I'm going to have someone to do all my stuff. You know, it's someone will take
How's that working out?
It's completely the opposite of what reality is. But there's no real clear picture. And if you model your parents, and my parents are divorced.
My parents are divorced.
So there goes that. And my best friend, his first, second, third marriages are gone. So, you know, our models on who we follow. And of course, God was there the whole time, and he wasn't the first attempt. So I think because we saw so many marriages fall apart so quickly that we both made a very conscious effort to not be like that.
Exactly. So
do you have, what are your normal thoughts? Because we just talked about this as far as, how do you communicate? And for two people, you and I we don't like conflict, and we don't enjoy. You had used the word. You had said it wrecks us. So when there's actually something that comes up between us, we're not right for the rest of the day. No. And it's not like it got heated. It just, I think there's a level of disappointment that we each fail for what we did for the other person, that it's difficult to walk around thinking I messed up, or I didn't do this right, or I didn't do something else.
Yep. There's no worse feeling in the entire world for me than when someone who I genuinely love with all my heart and soul is upset with me for something I did. Not like I'm having a bad day and we got into an argument, but I said or did something that hurt them. Even once the forgiveness is there and we've moved on, I'll carry it on my heart for a few extra days. And I will promise you, it'll never be said or done again, because what it did to the other person rocks me so bad that I can't imagine doing that same thing to them.
Multiple times,
yeah.
But when you end up in a situation where you're not being served, and it was something we heard in church at one point, it was about expectations. And I think this was back in the Crazy Gilmore days. And if you set the expectation up front, what you expect of the person, you can avoid a lot of confusion, because usually you'll walk into a situation like, man, I know Jen's going to have dinner done tonight. It's going to be awesome because I'm tired and I've been running late all day. And you walk in the house and nothing's done.
Right.
And you're just like, all of a sudden now, instead of addressing it like an adult, you become a rage monster because I worked all day. This didn't get done. Because we believe that the other person should infer our intentions.
Right.
And that idea is so flawed. It's very much 19-year-olds in love kind of an idea. So when it's like, we're on this, we always think the same. No.
Exactly.
You don't even come close.
But I think that's one area where we are really good at. And last night's even an example. So last night we were working really late, and you said, do you want to grab the fur babies and go home and get, we won't even talk about wait for dinner, get our week dinner pulled together, or do you want to stay here? And it's like, oh, I don't really care. And you're like, it doesn't matter to me. Pick one, totally cool. But if we leave that up to each other to decide, so do you want to go home or do you want to stay? I'm going to go home. You would never be mad at me or be disgruntled or upset that I took that option. And if you said, hey, do you mind if I go home, get dinner prepped, and you stay and lock up? And if I said, no, I don't mind at all, it means we don't mind.
I got to tell you what's messed up. And we do this all the time. I would never take that because this is a real weird example, but I would always serve first and I'm never comfortable taking. So when there's a situation like that where it's like, hey, you go home, I'll stay here. You have to almost fight to make me leave because I would rather serve than to take. And
I actually don't know if I've ever stayed.
No, you run. You run for the door. But bye.
Bye, Felicia.
But when it comes that moment where you haven't set the expectations, the other person's just kind of sitting there and it's like, well, it's 50-50. I'm going to get this right or I'm going to get it wrong.
Right.
And if you do that enough times in succession, wrong guess, and then things flare up and then things get bad. And when those don't get resolved, then there's a division that starts. And as soon as there's a little bit of animosity or anxiety about that other person, you'll start to just stop avoiding situations where there's decisions to be made.
Yep.
Because you're like, I don't care. And you'll get to the point where you don't care about these 5 things.
Yep.
And then after a year or two, there's another 5 or 10 things you don't care about that you don't address, you don't work for, you don't try. And then over longer periods of time, there's all these things that you don't bother trying for, you won't communicate for, you won't serve in.
Right.
And now there's a whole laundry list of selfishness because now there's things that I just won't do because you've never read my intentions. And then you've got things that you won't do because you believe I take things that you do for granted. Because every day I just walk in the house and do my thing and don't really pay attention.
Exactly.
All the while, the one person is just thinking about how selfish the other person is because they're not meeting their demands that they don't know about.
Yeah. It's quite twisted.
Psychology is twisted. So setting expectations and talking up front. Now, when you do hit something and there's a flash or there's a flare up, being able to identify the problem in a calm and contextual manner.
Right.
Don't use inflammatory words. This is so elementary, but if this worked, then we wouldn't know so many people had screwed up relationships. Right. So we're covering the basics that this is most likely, most intelligent people understand this. But if you are ever in a situation where you're tired, you got to commute, you've got noisy kids, there's no food in the house, someone's got to go to sports, someone's got to help someone with the kids, they got to go to kids' CrossFit at night, or you run a gym, but you've got all these things. If you haven't spoken your expectations for the day, and not in the form of a command, it's just like, what do you feel about this for tonight? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it's got to be kind of negotiated and hashed out.
Right.
One person, by default, will always seem to be the more selfish one because they're taking all the easy ways. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense? So if there's 4 or 5 things that have to happen tonight, what I always do is I try to balance out the pain in the ass stuff.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I get it.
So if there's, you got to run an errand, you've got to go do a thing, you've got to call somebody, there's a certain degree of, all right, on the scale of 1 to 10 being a pain, that's a 2, that's a 2, that's a 10. There's got to be a balance where each person kind of instinctively balances for each other.
Right.
And if your communication sucks and you don't have intimacy and you don't have a good dialogue with each other, you never get to that point where you can honestly believe that the person can take it and will give something else.
I think along the same lines, though, it's too reading the signs of your spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend, that when you're like for you, for example, when you're exhausted, and you'll still fight till the end. I mean, that's just your personality, where if you were ready to fall over and I, made a comment about, our yard looks like it's a nightmare, you would go out and cut it even if you'd fall asleep while doing it. But it's recognizing the signs and not placing other demands. So you are not a store person. You're not a shopping person. You don't like anything about it. So if I can run and do an errand for you or do something, I know that that's going to free you up to work on something else that needs to be done that you actually enjoy. So it's also knowing each other's what they enjoy, knowing each other's moods, and caring enough to kind of help each other through it. if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. But you have to care enough to do this.
Of course
And
you
it's
do.
never too late in the relationship, no matter what's happened or how long you've been married or how many arguments you've had,
Mm-hmm.
or you can always just say, can we have a conversation, and just start setting out expectations. And an expectation doesn't mean boundary, and an expectation doesn't mean a list of chores.
No.
That's not what expectations is.
No.
And it's cool to rotate these things. All right. Some friends of ours, Alex and Layla, and I don't know if it was Alex's idea. He did a video on it about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and he was talking about cheat codes.
Yeah.
And he referred to this, and he was a newlywed, and it was entertaining because he was a newlywed, you
Yeah.
know, and it's always funny to see new people, and they're very robust in their marriage and what their tolerances are. It's like, yeah, go for it, dude.
It's funny that first
Awesome.
like year or two, there's like nothing that
Oh, yeah.
bothers you at all.
Oh yeah, it's like I would like sex every Tuesday morning forever.
For
All right,
exactly, it's
dude.
like, yep,
Sweet. I hope it works. But the idea was it's following that principle of setting expectations. It's kind of the same vein, which is why I'm bringing it up. Setting the expectations so that your person knows what you want them to do
Yes.
before the situation comes. That way there's no
Yes.
surprise when they fail you.
right.
And remember, we're human. We fail God every day. So don't put yourself higher than God to think that you are not someone to be toiled with.
Yeah.
Okay. God's more important than you, and you screw up all day.
Yep.
Now, this cheat code idea is, and again, they were newlyweds, and they had the conversation of what would make you unbelievably happy. And he used the reference of cheat codes like video games. If you have the cheat code, you'd get superpowers, and you get extra levels, and you get all these things if you just knew the code. So he referred to these things with his spouse and his spouse with him. What are my cheat codes?
Right.
So what do you need to do? What do I need to do to get you to the next level?
Right.
And it was pretty intelligent. It's like, well, I don't ever want to fix lunch again.
Yep.
And I don't ever want to fold shirts,
Yep.
you know.
I got that one covered. Honey.
But you absolutely do. Perfect shirt folder. But the idea was, here's the top 5 cheat codes,
Yes.
and you can't be reckless with them. You know, if it's my number one thing, I don't ever want to make dinners. And it was funny because I think I looked at you at that time. I was like, I'll make all the breakfasts and most of the lunches for the rest of my life. I
Yes.
don't ever want to make a dinner
Yep.
because
and you don't want to think about what to make for
No,
dinner.
I just want to
You
show
don't
up.
want it. Basically, you don't want any part of dinner except the eating.
that's right. I'll
and
show up.
That's not true. In the cleanup,
And
You're
I'll do
excellent there.
I'll do the cleanup, but I don't care what the heck is there. I just want to see it, you know. So the idea was come up with 5 things for you and your spouse. You guys sit down. You don't write these together. You write them separately, and then you hand each other your cheat codes.
Yep.
These are things that eternally will make your person happy, and you don't have to set expectations. You don't have to infer it. We've been married for 15 years. You should know these things by now.
Of course.
There's ways to do things, and it's brilliant as long as you're just able to keep life, you know, moving in that direction. You have to constantly keep checking in to make it work. But that was brilliant as far as avoiding contentious issues, because if your person's always working to make you happy, you are, unless you're an a-hole,
Unless you're an a-hole.
you're going to work to make your person happy.
Yeah.
And you can save all that time with the confusion and the anxiety and the anger in
Yep.
some cases, and everything's great.
I agree. And I think some of those things that would typically annoy people who don't have a relationship like you and me, they seem to escalate. Whereas we just we have our own buckets that we kind of work on. So our own responsibilities to contribute to our life. And then sometimes they cross over, and probably way more so for us because we actually work together too. But when any sort of I don't want to say an issue, but when something comes up that would probably rock some marriages to the core, you and I can kind of go with it. And I was just thinking about, because you mentioned clothes. Do you remember? I don't remember how long ago it was because I don't keep track of anything that's not important. You asked me one day, why did you stop putting away my clothes? And you said it in a way, and I remember.
I'm going to sound like a lazy baby.
No, not at all. But can't you see? So I know you very well. And I know the reason you asked is because when I did it, you would open drawer and it was perfection. Everything was lined up. Everything was matched. Everything was perfect. And then when I stopped and you did it, your drawers turned into a teenage boy.
They're destroyed.
Exactly. But I think that if you don't have such open communication and the desire to do something for your person, that kind of thing could really piss somebody off. Whereas for me, I remember saying to you, I don't know what happened, but the drawers are so packed full. I feel like when I put them in there, I'm just shoving and it bothers me. I can't put something in there and have it be crammed and ugly.
I think you also said that if you're not going to take care of it, I'm not putting anything in there anymore. Which is fair.
It was just a fun, like it was one of my favorite things you ever said. Because first of all, it was just so genuine and real and raw. But it was like, I almost felt like you wanted to go, like, are you mad at me? Because you used to do this thing and then you stopped and now look what happened in my dresser.
It's chaos. What the hell are you doing? The little things that you look around the house and you recognize that you never have to do them. And you don't really know about it until your person goes on travel.
Yes.
And when someone's out of the house and you're like, ooh, how does this get done?
Yes.
Because it's completely, when the house works as a partnership, there should be a fair split of, again, by ranking of irritability, by ranking of pain in the ass, how much you have to hustle and move. But those opportunities, of many, are great examples on how you can serve without expectation or return. I know we've talked about this, but that's probably the number one reason I continue to work on my side of our relationship is serving is the only path to making sure that there's the potential for joy in the relationship.
Yep.
If you can picture two people chasing each other in a circle, if one person stops moving, the other person just keeps running in the circle, the other person's going to get tired and they're going to notice that you're not doing anything.
Right.
But if you're actively working to outserve, that's probably another big one, outserve, there shouldn't be anything left to do, anything left to say, and you should go to bed pretty happy every night.
Absolutely.
Unless you own a gym. It's the only caveat. Otherwise,
That one
everything's
got
great.
me. I didn't expect that one.
Otherwise, everything's great.
But I think the best advice to give people, and we've talked to family and friends numerous times to say we recognize our marriage is not perfect. There's no such thing as it. But we, over almost 20 years together, we have figured out a lot of ways to make it awesome. Like truly just enjoyable and fun, and where I don't think I have ever felt taken advantage of, or that I was ever outdoing or, serving you more in any time ever.
That's if you listening can you say that?
Yeah.
Can you put yourself in a position where you don't think you have done more or have been taken advantage of in your relationship? Think about the resentment that comes with that if somebody has been happening
Right.
that has been happening to them and nothing's ever spoken about it.
Well,
Because one person just says, well, this is your role in the house and this is what
Exactly.
you're going to do from now on. And the other person just has no choice but to submit. It's like, well, I'm not going to burn my marriage down over this,
Yep.
but I resent it.
Yes.
And I don't want to do this anymore.
And I think that scary stuff is it's years and years and years of it that build up. And then you could be married to somebody or dating somebody who's completely clueless because you're walking around with a smile on your face saying
Yep.
everything's great. And on the inside, you're ready to, rip their heart out of their chest. And it's like, if you I never get fearful asking you to do anything or helping me, or I don't ever get fearful asking you to do something that I just don't want to do. Because if you've got the time, I know you're going to do it, just like I would hope you would know I would for the most part.
For the most part. I get frustrated because I don't prioritize well. And I can say that about myself, that I let other things step in my path. So you brought up something. If it has been a while and you've never been able to bring it up, then that's a fault on both parties.
Definitely.
So we've talked about this again. This is a lot of regurgitation, but from time to time, we would actually just out of the blue, one of us would ask, "Is everything cool?"
Yeah.
And you don't do it when things are bad or after you've had an argument or there's been some tension somewhere.
Goodness, no.
Definitely don't do it around the holidays. But
No, don't do it on vacation when you're in all your glory.
it's in the middle of a normal,
Yes.
no biggie day.
Yep.
You do a pulse check and you just say, "Are we cool? Have I done anything? Have I said anything? Do we need to talk about anything?" And it's kind of like a free moment to where it's like, actually, I've been, because most people don't know how to bring stuff up.
Yep.
How do you bring, if there's no strife in the house, how do you use that opportunity to possibly introduce something that might cause a riff?
Yes.
So there has to be, again, the expectations. You can bring something up right now and it's not going to cause an argument. But can I please talk about how you never pick up your socks?
Exactly. Was that reference to you?
Yes, I was talking to myself. It's not that I don't pick them up. It's that I leave them everywhere. I do what I want. Okay. What else you got?
I think the biggest one, you just touched on it, is just if something's bothering you, don't wait years to bring it up, and just don't let it fester over time. And there is no benefit to doing it. If something bothers you, or if you've, asked your person a couple times, hey, do you mind doing this? Do you mind doing this? Unless, again, they're an a-hole, it's just simply forgotten. And remember that you also have probably forgotten one or two things in your life. So if it's very important, you know this about me. If it's that important, I write it down.
There's a sticky somewhere.
And I'm like, hey, honey, when you can get to this, and set the expectations not to your scale, but to your person's. So I would never be like, can you get the, can you get the upstairs painted tonight? I want the whole thing done tonight. I'm tired of looking at it. I want it done tonight. Like, don't be demanding and ugly about it. Just say, hey, this is...
That's another big one.
Yeah. This is when you have time, can you do this? And if it's like, sure. And it'd be like, and is there any way you can within the next 10 days?
That's even better. Send a buffer.
Exactly.
That's another thing. Guys or girls, if you agree to do something, you've got to kind of take pieces. I'm a person that will compartmentalize and do what I can as I move. So I like to break tasks up into periods. So
Yes,
it's like,
you do.
I will get this done, and
Yep.
that way there's movement.
Yes.
But also don't blow off something that your other person has said is important to them.
Yeah.
You can deprioritize it all you want, but if it's enough to where they brought it up, put it on a sticky, then it's important enough to pay attention to.
Exactly.
Which is why a lot of times if you've brought it up to me, I'm like, she wouldn't have brought it up if it wasn't important. I'm
Right.
going to go do this thing.
And two, respect that each other's importances are different. I mean, there's something probably in the house that I would want done that you're like, that's the dumbest thing in the entire world, but you love and respect me enough that you're going to do it. And it's the same with you. It could be like, why is that even a priority? That's so silly. But you and I, we are so different that I think a lot of those priorities would be different for us.
Of course they would.
Yeah.
Which is why if you're not talking, it's never going to come out.
No.
It's almost been entertaining. The more you talk and the longer you are in a relationship with somebody, you can start to really appreciate the differences. I mean, before it's like, we never get along. We have nothing in common. And now it's like, I cannot believe how little we have in common.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Because just the differences in the way we handle things, the way we issue resolution, the way we have fun, the way everything's got a different nuance. And when you get into the very, very nitty gritty, even down to the tiniest of details, they're the opposite.
Yes.
There's
Completely.
nothing the same.
No.
And that is something to be enjoyed.
Yes.
Because you just don't know what the hell's going to come out.
Our commonality is we both really love the Caribbean.
That's
The
right.
end.
And we live in the same house. The end times two.
Well, and we love Fitz and Millie.
Oh, we're so bad that the dogs are even opposite now. They're not even. The dogs are more like us.
Exactly.
All right, awesome. So this was. It's important enough to bring up and discuss. I don't think we can talk about this too much because unless your relationship is solid and fantastic and it's mutually beneficial all the time, then you're not living a real joyful life.
Yep.
The relationship shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a burden. Shouldn't be something that you regret. It shouldn't be something that you use to control somebody with.
Right.
And then don't forget the people that watch you. And that's not just kids. I mean, heaven forbid you screw them up too, but your friends, your family, because your behaviors can be replicated in the circles that you run.
Yep.
So if you're shitty to your spouse, hang out with other people, they see you being shitty to their spouse, that can rub off and they can be shitty to their spouses if they're not centered and balanced people.
We've seen it. Absolutely.
Yeah, we know a bunch.
Yeah. And I would too say that if your family and friends know that there is something about your person that you detest or behavior and your person doesn't know it first, you got some issues.
There's certain things that should never leave.
Exactly. So keep what needs to be between you. And
If it
There we
lives in
go.
the house, it stays in the house.
exactly. I like that.
Nothing regarding your person or your relationship.
No.
And I hate saying this, but even with parents,
No.
because there's a point that I mean, unless there's violence involved, but there's a point there where if you have an argument and that comes out, the person you're sharing is always going to, the sharing to is always going to be on your side, and
Well,
they're
of
always going to be
course.
like, that is SOB.
Always.
You need to put an end to that, you know, because they're not going to. Most people don't think perspective. They think, I'm going to defend you. I'm going to defend the person I
better
love.
believe
To
it.
hell with the other person. And if you start opening that up and showing that underbelly of your relationship to other people, that it's not two-sided as soon as you share it. It's one-sided.
Of course.
And it doesn't matter what you say. They're always going to believe you. They're always going to take what you say at 100%, and the other person's a piece of shit.
Yes.
So don't take that stuff out.
No. And I think something fun with us, with our besties, is if we ever share anything that, conflict we've had, we are both always present. Where we're like, oh my gosh, we've got to tell you. And typically ours it's been like a long couple weeks and we're just tired and pissy.
We tell on each other.
And so we will tell on each other together. So it's like, and then get a good laugh out of it and share kind of, what we've learned, or do you believe how ridiculous we both were? But we don't play that game of, I would never sit with a girlfriend and be like, Brian's an ass. Like, come on.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Not with you, but there's guys that do it too.
I know. I believe it.
My wife is such an a-hole. Yeah.
To clarify, you were not calling me an a-hole.
Not right now. All right, awesome, guys. I hope this is useful. Remember, it's never too late to try to make something greater and to seek joy everywhere you can.
Yeah.
And we talked about it in the beginning that if Jesus, I'll get real specific on my faith.
Yeah.
If Jesus is in your relationship, it's Jesus asking you to do the dishes.
Exactly.
It's Jesus asking you to mow the lawn. Your spouse is just the mouthpiece for it. But if you're sitting there, would you tell God no? You'd be like, you got it.
You better believe it.
You'd serve without question.
Yeah, I'll do them twice.
But now if you look at your spouse and you're like, that's selfish. She never does anything around the house. I'm not doing it for her. She's not asking you.
No.
God's asking you to serve your spouse.
Yep.
So put that in your mind before you start flaring up. All right, awesome. Hope this helps, guys. And it's a little bit of a break away from the same old, you need to work out, you're fat, you eat bad. We all eat bad.
Want to talk about macros?
That's right, no macro talk. So this is a little bit of life, spice of life.
Spice of life.
All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one.
All right.
Later.
Bye.